Hello, friends. World War II was the most devastating war in human history. It shattered nations, tore apart families, and reshaped the world forever. Entire cities lay in rubble. Millions of lives were lost. But beyond the destruction, the war gave birth to a new world order. Today's global politics, international relations, and even modern-day conflicts all trace back to that one war. In this video, let's understand World War II in its entirety, from beginning to end. What exactly happened? Why did it happen? And what was its long-term impact? This is the full story of World War II. It's difficult to identify one single spark that ignited this fire. It wasn't one event. It was a series of them, brewing, boiling, and eventually exploding into war. And at the root of it all was the most hated treaty in modern history, the Treaty of Versailles. The year was 1919. World War I had just ended. And as part of the peace negotiations, the Treaty of Versailles was signed. One clause in particular, Article 231, the infamous War Guilt Clause, placed the entire blame for the war on Germany. Regardless of who fired the first shot, Germany was to bear the full responsibility for all losses. France and Britain demanded heavy reparations. Germany was ordered to pay a fine of $33 billion. Adjusted for today's value, that's over $270 billion. And the burden fell directly on the German people. Germany made its first payment in 1921, but soon after, its economy collapsed. Hyperinflation followed. The German mark became worthless. In 1922, a loaf of bread in Berlin cost 160 marks. Just a year later, the same loaf cost 200 billion marks. The German economy was shattered. Unemployment soared, starvation spread. And in this chaos, a man rose to power. His name was Adolf Hitler, a young political leader with powerful speeches and dangerous ideas. In 1923, Hitler and his Nazi party attempted to overthrow the German government in a failed coup. But rather than ending his career, this only made him more popular. Soon, a poisonous narrative spread that Germany's humiliation was the fault of anti-national elements within. Jews and socialists were blamed. Hatred grew. Propaganda machines roared to life. Newspapers, radio, posters, all spreading hate. Over the next 10 years, Hitler built a narrative, and the people believed it. Then came the Great Depression in 1929. Germany was already broken, and now it was crushed. 6 million Germans were unemployed. Children were dying from hunger. By 1933, Hitler declared himself the absolute dictator of Germany. Now in full control, he set out to fulfill his dream, the German Reich, a racially pure empire. Only Aryans were to live there. No Jews, no Slavs. A twisted ideology was spread, the Judeo-Bolshevik conspiracy. Hitler claimed that Jews had orchestrated the Russian Revolution and created communism to destroy Germany. In 1935, the world discovered something chilling. Germany had secretly built an air force. This was a direct violation of the Treaty of Versailles, which forbade any German military buildup. But surprisingly, instead of confronting Germany, Britain signed an agreement, the Anglo-German Naval Pact, giving Hitler the green light to expand his navy. While some sympathized with Germany's plight after World War I, France was alarmed. They built a 450-kilometer-long fortification along their eastern border. This became known as the Maginot Line, but Hitler had bigger ambitions. He wanted more than just military power. He wanted land, resources, dominance. And his first target was Austria. Austria shared a common language and history with Germany. Hitler believed it belonged to the Reich. In 1938, he forced Austria's chancellor to sign an agreement placing pro-Nazi officials in power. Within weeks, Nazi influence spread. The Austrian chancellor called for a national vote to determine Austria's independence. But before it could happen, Hitler invaded. German troops marched into Vienna. No shots were fired. The chancellor resigned. The Austrian government was dissolved, and Austria became part of Nazi Germany. Propaganda convinced many Austrians that Hitler would bring prosperity. He had become a symbol of hope, even though he was leading them into darkness. Next, Hitler eyed Czechoslovakia, specifically the Sudetenland region, home to 3 million ethnic Germans. He claimed it should belong to Germany. To avoid war, British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain signed the Munich Agreement in 1938, handing the Sudetenland to Hitler on the condition that he wouldn't invade further. It was a promise Hitler would break in less than a year. In March 1939, German troops invaded the rest of Czechoslovakia. The country was split, one part absorbed into Germany, the other turned into a Nazi puppet state. Chamberlain's policy of appeasement failed. Hitler wasn't stopping. His next target was Poland. But first, he made a surprising move. He signed a non-aggression pact with the Soviet Union. Two bitter enemies, Hitler and Stalin, secretly agreed to divide Poland between them. On September 1st, 1939, nearly 1 million German troops launched a massive invasion of Poland. They used a terrifying new military tactic, blitzkrieg, or lightning war. Fast tanks, roaring planes, soldiers high on a drug called Pervitin, known today as crystal meth, stormed the country with unimaginable speed. Germany's Air Force, the Luftwaffe, bombed cities. Poland's outdated army, still using horses, was no match. Britain and France had had enough. They issued an ultimatum to Hitler: withdraw from Poland or face war. Hitler ignored it, and on September 3, 1939, World War II officially began. Britain, France, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and South Africa declared war on Germany. But Poland stood alone. Despite declarations, no military help came. This phase became known as the Phony War, because technically, war had been declared, but no fighting happened in Western Europe for months. Meanwhile, Poland fell. On one side, the German army. On the other, Soviet forces invaded from the east. Poland was split in two. Next, the Soviet Union turned to Finland. Stalin feared Germany would soon invade Finland and threaten the Soviet city of Leningrad, just 50 kilometers from the border. So in late 1939, Stalin demanded territory from Finland. When they refused, the Soviets invaded. Despite being outnumbered and outgunned, the Finnish soldiers held their ground fiercely for over 2 months. Eventually, in March 1940, they signed a peace treaty, giving up 11% of their land. Back in Germany, Hitler turned his sights to Norway and Denmark. In April 1940, both countries were swiftly invaded. Denmark surrendered in a matter of hours. Norway resisted but soon fell. The British Prime Minister, Neville Chamberlain, was blamed for this failure and resigned. In his place stepped Winston Churchill. That very day, May 10, 1940, Hitler launched his biggest assault yet, a full-scale attack on France, Belgium, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg. The Maginot Line, France's great defense, was bypassed. Hitler's army struck through the dense Ardennes forest, a region the French thought was impassable. 3 German army groups attacked in perfect coordination. French and British forces were surrounded. Hundreds of thousands of Allied troops were trapped near the port of Dunkirk, with no way to escape except by sea. What followed was one of the most incredible evacuations in history. Operation Dynamo. British civilians joined the Navy with fishing boats, yachts, and ferries, all racing across the English Channel to rescue the stranded soldiers. Under constant German fire, more than 350,000 troops were saved, but France was doomed. On June 22, 1940, France surrendered to Nazi Germany. Meanwhile, Italy, under dictator Benito Mussolini, had joined the war on Hitler's side. Together, they formed the Axis powers. By July 1940, Hitler controlled most of Europe: Austria, Poland, Czechoslovakia, Denmark, Norway, Belgium, the Netherlands, Luxembourg, and France. The only major opponent left was Britain. The Soviet Union had a peace pact with Germany. America had not yet entered the war. At this point, Hitler believed his victory was inevitable, but he was wrong, because now began the resistance. Now began the fight back. And in the next video, part 2, we'll see how Britain, the Soviet Union, and eventually America turned the tide. Thank you for watching. If you found this story powerful, make sure to watch the continuation, part 2 of the full World War II story. See you in the next video.
History connects us all. What's your view on this event topic? Comment your thoughts below. Please like, share, and subscribe for more interesting facts.